Grace and peace to you today. It's good to be with you as we take a look at one of the readings for this upcoming Sunday. This time we're taking a look at the psalm that is part of the lectionary. And it's Psalm 119, verses 1 through 8. It begins, "Happy are they whose way is blameless, who follow the teaching of the Lord. Happy are they who observe your decrees and seek you with all their hearts, who never do any wrong, but always walk in your ways. You laid down your commandments that we should fully keep them. Oh, that my ways were made so direct that I might keep your statutes. Then I should not be put to shame when I regard all your commandments. I will thank you with a true heart when I have learned your righteous judgments. I will keep your statutes. Do not utterly forsake me." Here ends the reading. At Holy Comforter, we don't often read the Psalms in worship as one of our readings on Sunday mornings, but there is a psalm assigned in the lectionary, and there's a rich tradition in using the Psalms for devotion or meditation or prayer, even if not always in worship. One of the helpful characteristics about the Psalms is that they are written as both a witness to God with rich and beautiful language of praise and worship, and also with the voice of someone in a similar place as we often find ourselves, wanting to be faithful and yet struggling for their life to match the one they want to live that seems to match what God hopes for them. That's how I read our psalm for today, one that aligns with other readings in terms of the struggle with trying to live into God's laws and commandments well. Sometimes the Psalms give us language for the place that we find ourselves in our faith, and Psalm 119 could be that for you. We still struggle to live into the laws and commandments that God gave to God's people, to live the lives that God wants for us. Sometimes it's complicated to figure out exactly what God would have us do because the systems that we engage in are so complicated that it's hard to figure out where the power in the system is, who benefits, and where there are victims, and then how we should or shouldn't participate in that system. Basically, sometimes it's hard to figure out how best to love our neighbor because the complicated nature of the systems in which we participate. But often, we know the appropriate behavior. We know how to love our neighbor. At least in some cases, we know how to refrain from hurting them. And whether it's our own insecurities or self-centeredness, things that lead to sin or selfish behavior, there are plenty of times when we refrain from neighborly love that we have the opportunity to live out. Sometimes we're just bad, but a lot of times there are forces outside of ourselves that get in the way. We're busy, or we're overworked, or we're under-resourced, or we've been beaten down. That's what I love, or why I love the line, "Oh, that my ways were so direct that I might keep your statutes." Because it seems to acknowledge these forces that are at work, and that it's a combination of our own failings and the stresses of the world that get in the way. I think it's fair to pray both for our own growth as well as for the circumstances that we're in. But we should also put the work in to minimize those circumstances, to remove the barriers around us that keep us from righteous living. I also appreciate that the translation is, "Happy are they who follow your decrees and seek you with all their hearts." So many places it talks about living according to God's laws and commandments for the purpose of acquiring something in return. But to live into them is its own reward. And I think describing someone as happy for doing so helps us get this across. To live into God's laws and commandments is not to live a life that is void of joy as if they are stifling for us, but it's living a life in good relationship with God and with one another. And that is, in and of itself, a good thing. It means that we are living in loving and supportive relationships in which we know that we're cared for and supported. We can trust one another. We aren't in this thing called life alone. To live in healthy relationships is a huge gift. And God's laws and commandments help us to see what those relationships look like, what that life living in those relationships looks like. Not to receive a reward on the back end of it, but because good relationships are a reward in and of themselves. I also think that there's some peace that comes with living in harmony with the way that we were created, which is for love, for mutual relationships, not for fear and hoarding and self-centered living. Happy are they who follow your decrees and seek you with all their hearts, because in doing so, they experience beautiful, loving relationships, and their being is in line with who they were created to be from the beginning. Psalm 119 helps give us language for our desire to live according to God's laws and commandments that help us live into good and loving relationships, and gives us language for our struggle, internally and externally, to do so. As I mentioned in the sermon this past Sunday, perfection isn't really the expectation. I say that not to say that it's okay, keep sinning, but to remove the fear from when we do, because we rely not on our own righteousness, but on Christ's. But a life striving to live more and more righteously, more into the laws and commandments that God gave us, is a life well lived, and a life more and more oriented toward the loving relationships that we were created for. That's the thought that I have for today, taking a look at the psalm that's part of our lectionary, and I hope that it's helpful for you. Maybe it gives you a reason to delve into the Psalms a little bit more deeply in your own faith life. And if there are some thoughts that come up for you that you'd like to keep going, feel free to reach out, and we'd be glad to have that conversation with you. But whether you do or not, I hope you have a wonderful week, and God's peace to you.